So today you're going to compare functions. So to compare functions, you have to first determine the rate of change for each function. In other words, you have to find the slope of each function. And then you have to determine the starting value for each function, and that's the y-intercept, or the b. And then lastly, you're going to compare the rates of change and the starting values to compare the different types of functions. So take a moment to write these steps down on your note page. Hit pause if you need to, and then come back and go on to the first example. Example 1 is comparing a table and a graph, and we're comparing the Ferrari versus the Lamborghini in time versus distance. So when we look at the Ferrari, it has a slope of 100, and the Lamborghini has a slope of 150. So to find this Ferrari's slope, we did 400 minus 200, 2 minus 0, 200 divided by 2 is 100. And then on the graph, you would rise 300 and run 2, which equals 150. So which car had a head start? Well, that would be the intercept, and since the y is 200 when x is 0, it would have started at 200, and the Lamborghini started at 50, so the Ferrari would have had a head start since it started at 200 meters. Which car is driving faster? Well, since the slope is 150 for the Lamborghini drives at a faster rate. And which car will have traveled further after 9 hours? The table doesn't include 9 in the hours, so you have to use your slope to adjust. So if it's 100 miles for every hour, we add 100 miles to 7, or hour 7, and so that would be 1,000 for the distance in 8 hours. And then if you go to the graph and look at where 9 hours is, the graph does not include the 9 hours, so we can start at 8 and add the 150, which is the rate, so 900, not 900, 1,250 plus 150 is 1,400, so the Lamborghini would have driven farther after 9 hours. Again, pause if needed and come back to example 2. Example 2, we're comparing a graph to a word problem. We're talking about two different divers, and so if we look at the graph, we have the diver A starts at 30 feet, and he dives at a rate of 3 feet per second. And then diver B starts at a board that's 25 feet above the pool, and then he falls at a rate of 4 feet per second. So which diver jumped from a higher point? That would be diver A, because he started at 30. And then which diver is falling at a faster rate? Diver B would be falling at a faster rate because they're falling 4 feet every second versus diver A is only falling 3 feet per second. And then which diver will hit the water first? To be able to figure that out, we have to see, well, where does y equal 0? Because our height would be 0 if they have hit the water. So for diver A, if y is 0, then x would equal 10 by plugging y in, a 0 in for y and solving for x. And then for diver B, if y is 0, x would be 6.25. So diver B would hit the water first at 6.25 seconds compared to 10 seconds. Alright, let's take a look at example 3. We're comparing words and equations, and so we've got Betty versus Bart, and baby Betty was 23 inches long at birth and grows 2 inches every month, and Bart was 21 inches at birth and grows 2 inches every month. So which child is growing the fastest? They both have a slope of 2, so they are both growing at the same rate. Which child was the tallest at birth? Well, the starting value for Betty is bigger, so 23, Betty is the tallest at birth. And then which child will be taller at age 2? But age 2, you have to convert that to months, so that's 24 months. So where will x be 24? So you plug in x for 24 for Betty, and that means she would be 71 inches. And then For Bart, he would be 69. So Betty would be 71 inches at age 2. And example 4, we're comparing equations and tables. And so we've got Pete's Pizza versus Mike's Pizza. So before we can compare, we would have to find the slope and the y-intercept for the table. And which pizza place is cheaper for plain cheese? Well, plain cheese would not be considered a topping, so the starting rate for pizza for Pete's would be $12, and Mike's would be $14. So Pete's Pizza is cheaper for a plain cheese pizza at $12. Which pizza place charges more for toppings? Well, the slope is the price per topping, so Pete's would be $2.50 per topping, and Mike's would be $1.50. So Pete's charges more for toppings at the $2.50. And lastly, which place would cost more for 4-topping pizza? And since the table does not show a 4 in the table, you would have to add the rate or the slope to the previous value. And so $18.50 plus $1.50 would be $20. And then if X is 4 for Pete's, you would plug in X is 4 and solve to get that. The total would be 22. So Pete's Pizza would be more for $22 for a pizza with 4 toppings versus Mike's is only $20.